There are a handful of Hebrew characters that are written differently when they come at the very end of a word. There are historical reasons for this that I can entertain you with another time at the chalkboard. But for now, you just need to be aware of them. There are 5 of these, and kaf is the first that we've run into as we go through the alphabet. So, if you look at our, in the first row there, you have the initial and medial forms of kaf. When I say initial, I mean when it doesn't come after a vowel, usually at the beginning of a word or a syllable. And the medial form is the one I've been saying comes after a vowel. That is, it's in the middle of a word or at the end of a word, right? Or in the middle of a word. When kaf comes at the end of a word, you can see that it's written differently. How is it different? Well, for one thing, you can see that instead of curving around onto the line that it's written on, it drops below the line. You see it's written just with 2 strokes, dropping below the line. And also you can see that there's a sharp corner at the upper right instead of a round corner at the upper right. That sharp corner is called a tittle, and we'll say more about that before the end of the lesson. So in looking at our alphabetic characters, the aleph bet, one thing we've looked at aside from just the characters is that some are written with or without a stop, with or without a dagesh. Kaf is one of those characters. So was bet and gimel and dalet, right? Written with or without a dagesh. There are also some characters that have a different form at the end of the word. And they have a different final form. Kaf, again, is one of those characters. Here's spirantized kaf, that is kaf coming after a vowel. And there's spirantized kaf coming after a vowel and being at the end of a word. It's transliterated the same way no matter what, as a K with a line under it. That is to say, transliteration does not distinguish between the regular form and the final form of kaf. And that's true of all characters that have final forms. In the transliteration system, we don't care about showing that it's at the end of a word. Why? Because you can see that it's at the end of the word. It's at the end of the word. So here, your strength, kochacha, kochacha. Right? Some difficult sounds coming together there. There's the chet with its cat with a hairball sound, ha, and chet and kaf, spirantized at the end of the word, ch, ko, ch, cha, ko, ch, cha. Don't worry, you'll get there. The point here is that it's transliterated just the same as if the spirantized kaf were anywhere. Next character, lamed. Lamed represents the L sound, transliterated with a Roman L. So, in the Hebrew word for heart, lev. Lev. Again, the second character is bet, but it comes after a vowel, and so it does not have a dagesh, and it's pronounced v. Mem is the M sound. It corresponds to Roman character M. Melech is the Hebrew word for king. Melech. Melech. You can see the kaf comes at the end of the word, so it's written in its final form, the one that drops below the line. And it follows a vowel, so it does not have a dagesh. And so it's represented as a K with a line under it. But the first character is just mem, melech. Mem, like kaf, is a character that has a different form when it's at the end of a word. That is, it has a special final form. You can see that it's sort of a box with a tittle in the upper left-hand corner and rounded on the upper right-hand corner, even though it's squared in the lower corners. So in the word, in this word, maim, hey, maim, compare the maim at the beginning of the word with the maim at the end of the word. They're both maim, it's just written differently when it's the last character in the word. Noon. Noon is the n, like in Nancy sound, corresponds to English N. So in the Hebrew word for the south, Negev, Negev, see the noon at the beginning of the form. Note that it's written with a B in the anglicized form, but we would still pronounce it in Hebrew, Negev, because the bait is spirantized, not stopped. Noon, as with kaf, as with maim, has a special final form. All that happens is that it just drops below the line instead of staying on the line. Noon. Samech. Samech makes the s sound, so it's transliterated with a Roman character s, as in the personal name Sanballat. Sanballat. Ayin. Ayin. Do you remember the glottal stop sound we made for aleph? This is the same sound. In the ancient times, they were pronounced differently, and they are usually not confused in the Hebrew Bible. However, modern Hebrew pronounces them identically, and so will we. However, it will be important to know in the word that you're speaking whether that word is spelled with an aleph or an ayin. And so the ayin, for transliteration, it also uses a semicircle, but it's going the other way. You'll remember the semicircle that we use for the aleph looks like an apostrophe. It's the right side of the semicircle. The semicircle, it's the right side of the circle. For the ayin, we use the left semicircle. So here, Eden, right? It's the sound at the beginning of Eden. Note that the noon at the end of the word is written with its final form, the form that drops below the line. Ezra. There's a word that's got them both. Ayin at the beginning and aleph at the end. Ezra. Pei is our next character. You can see that it's written with a dagesh. It's the fifth of the 6 characters that may or may not be written with a dagesh, and makes the p sound, Roman P. As in the Hebrew word for Passover, Pesach. Pesach. If the P follows a vowel, it will not have that stopping of breath, the p, but will be held partly open so that the breath comes through. And in that case, it makes what really is an F sound. But it's not transliterated as an F, it's transliterated as a P with a line over it. That is a spirantized P. Furthermore, Pei is one of those letters that has a different final form. And as perhaps we've come to expect, it's written more or less the same as the regular form of Pei, but it drops below the line instead of curving to stay on the line. So there's your regular form of P and the final form, the regular form of Pei and the final form of Pei. So for instance, in this personal name, anglicized Jephthah, Hebrew Yiftach, Yiftach, Yif rhymes with jif or if, Yiftach. The Pei comes after a vowel, And so it's pronounced as an F and is written without a stop. Yiftach. Similarly, in the Hebrew word elef, there's the aleph at the beginning, elef, and a final form pei at the end. And the pei is also spirantized because it comes after a vowel. Elef. Sade. Think of the TS sound in the word tsitsi fly. Tsitsi, like a TS. It's written in transliteration as an S with a dot under it. You remember that's an emphatic sound because it's sort of like an emphatic S. It's not just S, but it's S with more emphasis, that TS sound. Kibbutz, kibbutzim, ts. So the Hebrew word for shade or shadow, right, like you're in the shade of a tree, is sail, sail. Sade is another one of the forms that has a different final form. And you can see, again, it drops below the line instead of curving to stay on the line. Imagine if you looked at that initial medial form and took your finger and grabbed the end of the character and just pulled it down, which is going to stretch the character out of shape. And you can see that's how you wind up with the final form of Sade. So, eretz, Hebrew word for land, eretz, eretz. That Sade comes at the end of the word, so it's written with its final form. Kof, represents the k sound. It's when we say it, it's going to sound the same as a k. It's not a kwa sound. It's not QU, kwa. You'll hear people make that mistake in really bad, uninformed YouTube videos and such. But it's not kwa, it's k, just like the K. But again, even though you'll pronounce it like the K, you'll need to know whether the word is written with a kaf or rather with a kof. Here, the Hebrew word for forehead, kodkod. Kodkod. There's the kodkod. Right, not quad-quod. Don't be ridiculous. Kodkod. Reish corresponds to, it's transliterated with a Roman R. It's the R sound. Think of it, I mean, I don't care how you pronounce it. I'm from Chicago, and my R's tend to sound like I'm like rrr, rrr. Probably, really what we should be going for is a more European kind of click, you know, r, r, r. Not a trill, but a r. And in modern Hebrew, at the end of a word, it often sounds just like a W, like oh, oh. I'm not going to care how you pronounce a resh. I'll know it when I hear it. So just however you pronounce English R is going to do just fine. So Rachel, right? Like the name Rachel is Rachel, Rachel. And again, I don't care if you give me a good Chicagoan Rachel or a more European Rachel. Rachel, just however you pronounce R is going to be very happy. Seen, seen. You learned samek before. It makes an S sound and is transliterated with an S. Seen is also pronounced as an S. It makes the S sound. And to distinguish it in transliteration, we just put this acute accent over the top of it. Why would Hebrew have two characters that are pronounced the same? I don't know. Why does English have two characters that are pronounced the same? The C, right, that useless character in English, the C, sometimes it sounds like an S, other times it sounds like a K. It has no sound. We have no need of the C because it just duplicates what we have elsewhere in our alphabet, but we have it anyway because that's the way language works. So it is in Hebrew. You have the samach that makes the S sound, and you have the sin that makes the S sound. So the Hebrew word for seraph, it's kind of a winged serpent, like in Isaiah 6, seraph, seraph, seraph. Note the pei comes after a vowel, so it's spirantized. It's not p, but f. And it comes at the end of the word, so it's written in its final form. Seraph. Take the same character, put the dot on the right instead of on the left, and it's the completely different sound. It's sh, sh, like the librarian shushing you. And so that we can write that with one character instead of sh, we just put this little boomerang over the this hat check. It looks like a boomerang over the s to tell us to pronounce it sh. So, monetary unit or a unit of weight, shekel, shekel. Dot written on the left, seen. Dot written on the right, sheen. And finally, tav makes the t sound, so we write it with a t, we transliterate it with a t. Just remember that tet earlier on was written as a t with a dot under it, but we just pronounced it t. Tav is written with a t when we transliterate, and it's simply pronounced t. As in the personal name, Tamar. Now you see the dagesh in the character. It is one of those that, in its origins, when it was written, when it came after a vowel, it was spirantized. Ath, ath. But modern Hebrew makes no distinction, and neither will we. Anytime you see a tav, whether it has a dagesh or not, whether it comes after a vowel or it does not, it's t, t. So here, bat is the Hebrew word for daughter. Originally bath, bath, but modern Hebrew bat, and so we also pronounce it bat. And that's it, folks. Those are your characters. Now let's look at some of the ways that these are similar to one another. I know, at this point you are thinking that every Hebrew character looks exactly the same as every other Hebrew character. But there are only 22 of them, and you will find that you can distinguish between them very well. But it's going to take some intentionality here at the beginning of your studies with the written language to look at what makes them different. So looking at these three characters, these are the beit, the kaf, and the pei. Just for simplicity, they're all written spirantized here instead of with their stop. What are the differences? Well, let's start with the kaf in the middle. The kaf is just rounded on both of its corners. But go over and look at the beit. The beit is not only squared in the lower right corner, but one stroke goes further out from the other. That's called a tittle. When Jesus said that not one jot or tittle of the law would pass away, he was saying neither a yod, a yot, that is the smallest character in the Hebrew alphabet, nor even a tittle, that is a part of a character in the Hebrew alphabet, would pass from the law. So at the lower right-hand corner of the beit, that is called a tittle, and that's what distinguishes the beit from the kaf in the written language. Looking over at the pei, you can see the main difference is that extra little thing that fills up the middle. Looks like I don't know what it looks like. It's like a tongue in the mouth of the pei. The gimel and the noon. What distinguishes the gimel from the noon? Well, looking at the noon, taking that as a base character, very simple. Then look over at the gimel, and you can see that the bottom of the gimel is sort of like a kickstand. So there's like a kickstand sticking out from the bottom of it instead of that stroke that just comes around. Gimel and noon. What about dalet, resh, and kaf? That is the final form kaf. The final form kaf is what we're looking at here. Well, again, let's start with the resh as a basic character. It's got the rounded corner. Then look over at the dalet. Not a rounded corner, but a corner with a tittle. It's got the tittle. And then looking over at the kaf, not only is there the tittle, but it drops below the line. So how do you tell a resh from a dalet? It's the tittle. How do you tell a dalet from a final form kaf? Well, the kaf, the stroke drops below the line. And remember, you're only going to see the final form kaf at the end of a word. What about hey, chet, and tav? Well, let's start with the chet. You see that it's, oh, well, actually, let's start with the hey. With the hey, you can see that it's sort of like a dalet with a stroke next to it. And see how there's a space that lets the air out, right? And that's the letting out that breath. But remember, the chet is more constricted. And so the stroke comes all the way up to the top in order to constrict that sound. And the tav is distinguished from the chet by that stroke just being, well, for two reasons. One, it does not have a tittle in the upper right. See, it's rounded instead of tittled. And that left-hand stroke is curvy-wurvy. Vav, zayin, and nun. Well, the vav, taking that as our base stroke, very simple. It's just a hook or a nail. The zayin is more like it's wearing sort of a, think of that vertical stroke as wearing a jaunty beret up at the top of it. It's just a little more complicated there, isn't it? And the nun, this is the final form nun. The final form nun drops below the line. And again, you'll only see it at the end of the word anyway, so that will help. Final form kaf from final form nun, they both drop below the line, but look at them at the top. Completely different stuff going on up at the top of the character. Final form main. This is not the regular main, but the final form and the samic. Very similar to one another. Very easy to confuse. You'll sometimes see poor people who have gotten Hebrew words tattooed on them because they're excited about Kabbalah or something. And this is a common mistake that the tattoo artist makes. Note that the maim is simply squared off completely on both bottom corners, whereas the samic is rounded. Tzadeh and ayin, you know, you just got to write these out a few times. At a glance, they look very similar to one another, but once you start writing them out, just look at the strokes. I'm not even sure how to talk about these. Find your own language for it, but just look at how things are completely different in what's happening in how these strokes sit. And again, seen and sheen simply have the dot on the left and the right respectively. I need to break this off in order to preserve the file size that I need. I'm actually going to come on with a part C, which I don't normally do. Part C is just going to be some helping stuff that I think is worth coming back for. So stay tuned and come right back with part C of lesson 1.